For over 50 years, Burlington's legacy has been great deals on coats for all weather conditions. So before you're caught unprepared for the winter weather, head to Burlington for name brands, quality items, and surprising fits for every family member. Stock up on coats, sweaters, and accessories before the cold hits, so you can finally stop avoiding the elements and start living comfortably. Warm up at your nearest Burlington location less than 1 mile away. Burlington. Deals, brands, wow.
Hey, it's Austin James. If you're like me, trying to live your best life while living with diabetes, you can relate to worrying if you're doing a good job managing your diabetes. I use the Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor to get real-time glucose readings and see the impact of every meal and activity to make better decisions. The Freestyle Libre 3 Plus sensor can help me live life with diabetes on my own terms, and it gives me more time for the things I love, like being a dad and a musician. Now this is progress. Learn more at freestylelibre.us.
For prescription only. Safety info found at freestylelibre.us.
Hey Eagles fans, this is Chris Franklin from NJ Advanced Media, and welcome to the No-Huddle Show podcast, the show where we discuss all things related to the Philadelphia Eagles. Before we begin, I want to remind you that you can read our content on NJ.com/Eagles, and be sure to bookmark it to get the latest Eagles news and analysis. Today, I'm once again joined by my No-Huddle Show co-hosts Bob Brookover and Cayden Steele. Well, the Eagles continue to win, and this time probably got their best win, if this was the NCAA tournament, on their resume, defeating the Baltimore Ravens at M&T Bank Stadium. And it wasn't the prettiest win on offensively. Defensively, they were able to stand by. And now they're turning their sights to the lowly Carolina Panthers, but Panthers could be a test for them. We'll find out that and talk about that and more. We'll now go to Bob and Cayden. Guys, how are you doing today?
Hey, Chris, how you doing? Getting ready for the big Eagles-Panthers matchup. As you said, the Panthers been playing better football. Could make it an entertaining game, but I am going to doubt it. But we'll get to that question in a little bit.
How you doing, Cayden?
Doing good. Don't have maybe the level of excitement, for this week that I did, for last week when the Eagles beat the Ravens. But I'm excited. I'm excited for the remaining 5 weeks to see what happens here, to see if they get the 1 seed or not. And just generally, it's getting colder outside, so don't love that. So yesterday really felt cold. Standing outside for even just a few minutes waiting for the locker room, you can start to feel it. 36 today. So I'm not in love with the weather dropping, but I know you're opposite on that, Chris.
Well, yeah, you got to go, because now's the time, even when you practice, you just manage of it. As you see the bone-chilling feels of November go away, December comes early. Stuff like that. It's perfect times, and gives you some energy. It's good times to do that.
Chris Descendant.
Yeah, direct descendant. Yeah, if only. Just kidding. Not on top of that. But, we're going to go back and talk about that Ravens game. Speaking of winter weather, there was some snow flurries when we were watching that game down in Baltimore. The Eagles won that game 24-19, and we mentioned that one person that the numbers did not look great was Jalen Hurts. He finished with 11 of 19, completing 11 of 19 passes for 118 yards and a touchdown pass to Dallas Goedert. Overall, a 93.8 rating, which the rating is good. So there's some people that are still concerned about the passing game as a whole. I'm going to start with you, Bob, and I'm going to go to you, Cayden, after this. And one thing, it looked like that it wasn't the downfield passing that we normally saw. It wasn't as aggressive. And the numbers that came up with sometimes that people are calling him Jalen Hurts a game manager. I want to ask you, do you think he deserves that moniker of being a game manager?
Well, I think I actually asked Jalen this question after the game on Sunday to ask him what he feels about that term and to define. And he said, I just think it's a term. Everybody can be called that depending on the day, but the reality is everyone that plays a position is asked to manage a game to an extent. So it's the quarterback's job to go out there and do what he's asked to do: execute, play clean football, and initiate the plays that are called. So he's right. I mean, every quarterback is a game manager. Some quarterbacks are counted on more to win, but all Jalen cares about is winning. And I actually wrote this for the day after in my game review. When you really look at that game, when the game mattered most, Jalen made more plays. Lamar's numbers looked much better than the passer rating was higher. more yards passing, more yards rushing, all those things. But when it was time to win the game, Jalen Hurts, the Eagles didn't look good on offense off for most of the first half. And then they got a good field position, takes them down, scores. Next time they get the ball, takes them down, scores. They go in ahead at halftime. They really struggled for the third quarter. When the game, was time to put the game away, Jalen found 3rd and 7 play. He hits Dallas Goedert for a first down, a perfectly thrown pass, a well-called play. And then he gives the ball to Saquon Barkley for a 25-yarder. But before that, he had his own 14, I think it was 14 yards or 11 or 14, something like that, to keep the drive going. So his running plays came exactly at the right time. Call him whatever you want. After that, he started 1 for 5, and if you go back and look at that 1 for 5, there might have been one pass in there where he may have been able to make a different decision when you really look at it. From that point on, he was 10 for 14. He was asked to throw the ball 14 times, completed 10 of them, I think, is if you add those and throw a touchdown to Goedert. If you take those numbers, take that pass rating, I think his pass rating from that point on was like 110, something like that. He's in many ways, and I asked him this yesterday, can he have his best season without having his best numbers? And he said all he cares about, the only number he cares about is winning. And he's 10-2. The thing with Jalen that was haunting the Eagles early was his turnovers. He's cut them down entirely, cut them almost out. He's had 2, I think, during his 8-game winning streak. If he doesn't turn the ball over and he plays the game, call him a game manager, call him whatever you want, but you're also going to call him one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL.
Nice. Cayden, what do you think? Do you think he deserves the moniker game manager?
Yeah, I think it's unfair to just label him as a game manager. I don't view Jalen Hurts as like a top 3 or top 4 quarterback in football, but like Bob said, I do think he's one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL, like bottom top 10 type of guy. And I think to label him as a game manager is you just kind of, I think that term people are just saying doesn't really do anything special, just does what the coaches ask, which, it's not a bad thing if he's just, playing within structure. But I think we've seen over and over throughout his career, Jalen has the ability to not only make big time throws when it matters the most, but also extend drives with his legs. When you think a drive is done and it's 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 9 or 3rd and 10, and Jalen picks up a first down, those plays matter too. And not a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL can do it. So I think he's got 2 different factors, his legs and his arms, which makes him a dangerous threat every week. And I think there is something to it. And Saquon talked about it yesterday when he was talking to reporters, that Jalen kind of just has this it factor, and he can't really describe it. And to be honest, I can't really describe it. But like Bob said, he made more plays at the end of the game than Lamar. We've seen him outduel Joe Burrow this year, who's a top 4, top 5 quarterback. Maybe we could argue top 3 quarterback in the NFL. It just when it matters the most, it seems like Jalen can play a terrible game for 3 quarters or an inconsistent game, missed throws. Their offense is just all out of whack. And all of a sudden in the fourth quarter, he just makes plays after plays after plays. And to be honest, if I were a team, I'd rather have that than a quarterback that maybe looks looks like a better passer, or is more polished through 3 quarters, or makes more fun and highlight worthy throws. And then I rather have the guy that maybe doesn't do that as much, but somehow just wills his team to wins. And I mean, that's what Jalen Hurts has done. He won a lot of games at Oklahoma. He won a lot of games at Alabama. He's already taken his team to a Super Bowl. Is he the most skilled thrower in the NFL? Probably not. But to call him a game manager, I think discounts what he does, which is there's a certain level of it factor to him, and it's more than just being a game manager. And uh, I think he's a pretty good quarterback. I think he's better than your normal game manager, and I think people tend to be a little disrespectful towards Jalen Hurts just overall.
Nice. And personally, I think when you hear the moniker game manager, all the good quarterbacks are game managers to begin with, no matter what. And you basically just want to make sure that you don't turn the ball over. Okay, you look at that. Josh Allen doesn't turn the ball over like that. Lamar Jackson doesn't turn the ball over like that. Jalen Hurts doesn't turn the ball over like that. So yeah, you got that. And you just try to put your team in a position to win, which all those guys do as well too. You can be an MVP and still be a game manager. I don't know. I'm not saying Jalen Hurts is the MVP this season. You know, I know everybody's throwing that screen grab around about how his numbers are comparable to Josh Allen and stuff like that. But yeah, there's nothing. Personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with the moniker of it because you could place it on all the good ones, all the good quarterbacks. You could place that on there. But to think of him like when I think of the way that people are trying to like put him in there and say like he's like I saw somebody put him as Snoop Huntley and like Jake Delhomme and all that. He's not like those guys. He does a lot more than what you see, and he puts your teams in position to win. And that's all you can ask for your quarterback to do. And I don't know. Sometimes I think I keep hearing that going on. I keep hearing the fights about it, stuff going on. It's just weird to hear everybody talk about that moniker, and it brings that. And personally, I'm not going to repeat what Nick Sirianni said. There's a certain word that we got to keep this level as clean on there, but I kind of agree with him on that. It's a weird thing when you look at what he's done overall on that. Now we're going to move on to another offensive player. One the Eagles are going to be without again. This time is tight end Dallas Goedert, who is out, who's basically labeled as week to week now because of a knee injury. Goedert dealt with a hamstring injury earlier this season that forced him to miss 3 games. The Eagles made one move already by adding C.J. Uzomah to the active roster, signing him off the practice squad to replace him. But now it's been a couple of injuries that we've seen with him now over the last couple of seasons. And Greg Calcaterra has stepped up and played in his place. And it makes you wonder, and I'm going to start with you, Cayden. With Goedert out again with his knee injury, do you think this is Greg Calcaterra's audition to be the starter for next season?
I don't think so. Goddard still has another year on his contract as well, and the Eagles could move on after this season. I'm not sure if they will, even though the injuries do raise a major concern. I think it's more likely, and I think Bob wrote about it this morning, that the Eagles will go into next year's draft and target the future tight end. After Dallas Goedert, whether that's Tyler Warren or Colston Loveland or Gunnar Helm, anyone coming up in this tight end class in the first 2 or 3 rounds that they could be interested in, and that's not a knock necessarily on Grant Calcaterra. And I know he's going to have the next possibly 2 or 3 weeks to prove again that maybe he could be tight end one, and he was pretty good in the 3 weeks without Goddard. In the middle of that stretch against Cincinnati and Jacksonville, and I caught 3 passes for 58 yards against Cincy, 5 catches for 30 yards. We obviously know he has a connection with Jalen Hurts from his time at Oklahoma, but I just haven't seen enough from Grant Calcaterra as a blocker, mainly, just to be a complete number 1 tight end. I just don't think he's shown that through the first 3 years of his career, and I don't know if another 2 or 3 weeks is going to be enough for him to show the Eagles that he's ready to be that guy, to make them comfortable moving on from Dallas Goedert, and to make them comfortable, if they were to move on from Dallas Goedert, not drafting another tight end to be the tight end one like a Tyler Warren. I think Greg Calcaterra is an NFL player, and he's a pretty solid high-end number 2 tight end. He has some pass catching upside, but just as an overall complete tight end, a number 1 tight end that the Eagles can trust going into next year, I have my doubts that he's going to be that he can do enough in this stretch to prove it. I don't think they'll go to him enough, especially with Devontae back, AJ in the fold. I just don't think he's going to do enough to earn that job or prove that he deserves it.
Nice. What do you think, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, is he auditioning to be the number 1 tight end next year? No, if Dallas Goedert has a year left on his contract, so probably not. But here's a chance for him to really make a statement about the kind of player he is, and Cayden just gave the numbers, and before this year, the numbers were just he didn't do anything. He had 13. The Eagles tight ends, not just Grant Calcaterra in 22 and 23 that weren't named Dallas Goedert, had 13 catches for 132 yards and 0 touchdowns. Calcaterra this year has proven that he can be a little bit of a receiver. I don't think that's going to vault him to be the number one tight end. I don't think that will ever be his role on the team. He could be here for the extent of his rookie deal and maybe beyond, depending on what he's willing to take, the Eagles are willing to offer. I do think we have reached the stage, though, as Cayden just pointed out, it's time to draft the next tight end, and the Eagles have had remarkable success at that position through this century, really. I mean, Brent Selleck was a 5th round pick. He's 5th all time on the franchise list in receptions, 9th in receiving yards, 12th in receiving touchdowns, and he was replaced by Zach Ertz, who's 2nd on the team all time in receptions, 5th in receiving yards, and 7th in receiving touchdowns. And then Goedert replaces him, although those two were together for a while. So we could be looking that in the future. And I would not be against the idea at all of the Eagles drafting their next great tight end in this draft. And it's supposedly a deep draft. Cayden mentions the names Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland, but it goes beyond that into the second round. The Eagles, they would probably have to draft a tight end in the first round, and Howie's never done that. Their last tight end in the first round was Keith Jackson in 1988. You guys are probably too young to remember him. You might remember him, Chris. You might be.
I remember him. Yeah, I was 4.
He was first team All-Pro stud. He was an absolute stud. His only problem was he was a buddy guy, and Norman Brayman wasn't. He probably shortened his career in Philadelphia, but it's a deep draft in that regard. I think we could be looking at that this offseason. But in terms of this season, I think the Eagles really need Dallas Goedert back. He was a huge part of that game on Sunday, and they need to get him back healthy. They are fortunate that they have some cushion in for the NFC East and probably even cushion to be the second seed in the playoffs, NFC playoffs. But to get to where they want to go, I really think they need Dallas Goedert. They got to get him healthy and ready for the playoffs. So we'll see where things go from here.
Cool. Now it's time for our Inside Slant segment. This is where each of these guys will share something noteworthy that popped up leading to this week and comment on it. So I'm going to ask you, Bob, what's your Inside Slant?
I think my inside slant is, well, it is my inside slant is I heard this number and I didn't even know it. And now it'd be 26-1. The Eagles, according to the CBS telecast, are 26-1 now when they either win or tie the turnover battle during Nick Sirianni's tenure with the team. It's a remarkable number. And it goes back to what we just talked about. Being a game manager is Jalen Hurts. Usually if there's a turnover, the quarterback's involved somehow because it's either an interception and oftentimes the quarterback fumble because they're always under pressure. But not just them, but just that stat just really shouted at me that we look at all these big numbers and like how many yards were thrown for, how many yards were rushed for, and sometimes it's the little numbers that make matter more than the big numbers. What you don't do matters as much as what you do. And I just found that number fascinating when I was rewatching the game on Monday.
Nice, cool. Cayden, what's yours?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing from yesterday and is getting Devontae Smith back, who returned to practice yesterday after missing 2 weeks with a hamstring injury. We open up this conversation about the passing offense specifically, just not being as explosive. At least, that's been some of the criticism from people when you look at this offense and how fast they're starting. But getting Devontae back in the fold after he missed 2 weeks, we've seen the success that they had against the Rams. And even when they finally got things going with AJ on those 2 drives in the first half, getting a player like Devontae back could possibly open up a lot of things for this offense. And I think over the next 4 or 5 weeks, you're hoping, that this group can stay healthy. They really haven't, all year long. Just Goedert out of the lineup and AJ out of the lineup earlier this season, and Devontae being banged up the last couple of weeks, and also missing a game earlier in September against Tampa when they didn't have AJ and Devontae. You haven't really had to feel like this group as a passing offense has had a chance to be really have that chemistry. I know Goddard's going to be out, possibly um, the large portion of the rest of the regular season, but getting just Devontae and AJ back the next 3 or 4 weeks, I think it's going to be critical to see how much this passing game can grow before the offense and um, how much of it is just a chemistry thing going in.
All right, cool. Now it's time for the run pass option. This is the time where I'll read a statement, and if Bob or Cayden agrees, they'll run with it and explain why. If they disagree, they'll pass, and they'll also give a reason why. And here we go. Cayden, Saquon Barkley will finish with 150 yards this week against the Carolina Panthers, whose run defense ranks at the bottom of the league. You running or you passing?
I'm running with that, and I think it's easy for me. We saw what Saquon did against the Rams with 255 rushing yards, and that's a front that's a lot better than Carolina. They got guys like Jared Verse and Brandon Fisk and Kobe Turner. I mean, just the talent on that Rams defense, at least in the front seven, excluding the linebackers. I know the linebackers aren't great, especially after trading Ernest Jones, but they have some guys up front that are way better than anything that Carolina has in terms of personnel. And then not only that, Saquon rushed for 107 yards last week against the Ravens. Had scored, and a touchdown. First running back to go for over 100 on that Ravens top-ranked rushing defense. If he could do that against those two teams, I think he could go for more than 155 against Carolina. Carolina's run defense has been putrid this year. They don't have a ton of talent up front, especially on the front seven, other than like Jadeveon Clowney. They lost Derek Brown earlier this season, and that was a critical loss. One of the better defensive tackles from football. I think this is just a really, really, really difficult matchup against Carolina, for Carolina. And we didn't see Saquon last week. We saw the 25-yard touchdown, which is still another 20-plus yard touchdown, but we didn't see those 60 and 70-yard touchdowns last week against Baltimore. I think we'll see them again against Carolina. I wouldn't be surprised if it gets one or two. This is a tough matchup. I just don't know how Carolina's going to be able to stop Saquon, and it seems like 155 for Saquon is easier than the expected for other running backs. So I'll go yes.
All right, Bob, you running or passing that?
Oh, I'm running some more if I'm the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday. A lot's been made about the Saints or the Panthers have improved in recent weeks. They've won 2 of their last 4. Took a pretty good Bucs team. Handled the Eagles very well earlier this season into overtime last week. Played the Chiefs really tough the week before and beat the Giants and Saints the week before that. What they didn't do well in any of those games was stop the run. And that's the reason they're the worst running defense in the league, allowed the 3rd most rushing touchdowns in the league. Against the Saints, 197. Alvin Kamara had 155. Giants, 167. Tyrone Tracy had 106. Against the Bucs, 236. Bucky Irving had 152. Saquon's going to go over 150 this week. Saquon has Eric Dickerson's record in his sights. He has LaShawn McCoy's franchise record in his sights, which that could go down this week. But I think Saquon really wants that Eric Dickerson record. He'll never say it, but it's in his sights. And if you're going to get a record like that, when you're facing the 32nd ranked run defense in the NFL, that's one of the weeks you really got to put up some big numbers. And he's been doing it all year. He's 10 of his 12 games he's had over 100 yards from scrimmage, 8 of the 12 over 100 yards rushing. The Eagles are just a dominant team up front too. I mean, this offensive line is just playing, especially run blocking, just playing out of its mind good. And I don't think that's going to end against the Panthers this week. So run, and then run some more.
Cool. The final run pass option question, Bob, this goes to you. This is a trap game for the Eagles, and the Panthers will make things uncomfortable. You running or you passing?
Yeah, I'm going to pass on that. Here's why. So no doubt the Panthers have played better football, but they're going on the road for the first time since October 27th. Believe it or not, unless you count the London game, they were the home team there. But so that's a neutral site against the Giants, where they beat the Giants, who the Giants, I actually watched that game, beat themselves that day. I don't know what the heck happened to the Saints, how they fell apart, but they played 2 really good games at home, but now they go back on the road where they've played 5 games this year and have not been within double digits in any of those games. Lost all of them and not been within. Well, they did. No, I'm sorry, they did win in Vegas, but their other 4 games all lost by double digits. The Raiders stink. We know that too. Um, so I just and there's something about this team. I think, and probably I'm guessing is, and not just guessing, but this is from talking to guys like Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata and others. Um, that last year sits with this team in training camp. This team didn't want to talk about last year, but I get the feeling, and Lane Johnson has said it, that these guys, the veteran guys on this team, often remind the younger guys, hey, you know what? Nothing is given in this league. Don't take anything for granted. You saw what happened to us last year. Don't forget that. Make sure you're here preparing every day and preparing for every team. And then Nick Sirianni talked about it yesterday, how it would be a disservice to his team if he took the Ravens more. Took a more intense approach to coaching against the Ravens than he did the Panthers. I just don't see this team having a trap game or a fall down game. I'll go back to Brandon Graham after the Rams game. His season's over, but he's still talking about how, everybody thought this was going to be a trap game for us. Well, it wasn't. The Eagles came out and played one of their best games against the Rams on the road, and I don't see them I don't see them letting their guard down in this game.
All right, cool. Cayden, do you think this is a trap game against the Panthers and they'll make things uncomfortable? Are you running or passing with that?
I'm gonna pass with that as well. Look, you got to give all the credit to Carolina and Dave Canales over the last couple of weeks, over the last 3 weeks. The way they've got Bryce Young playing, bringing him back into the starting lineup after he got benched earlier this season. It looked like Carolina had a really, really rough future. It looked like Bryce Young wasn't the guy. And look, a few months later, it looks like Dave Canales is a pretty good coach, that Bryce Young has a future, and that Carolina's once awful future looks pretty, positive right now. But saying that, that's not enough. They come into Philadelphia and make it close. Look, I get what they did against Kansas City. They took them down to the wire, but Kansas City's been a really weird team this year. If it wasn't for a weird fumble at the end of that Raiders game, they might have lost on a kick from Darren Carlson. They've been playing down to the competition the entire season. And Tampa Bay, on the other hand, a very talented team. Obviously, we saw what they did to the Eagles in Week 4, but they've been banged up on both sides of the ball this year. And it's just not the same team they were earlier in the season. The Eagles are playing like the best team in football. I'm not sure if they are 100%. I'm not willing to put a declaration on that necessarily, but they're playing like it. They came off a big time win against the Ravens. They shut down Lamar Jackson and that offense. And if they could do that and shut down Lamar and Derrick Henry and the weapons that Baltimore have, and I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to be able to do the same thing to Carolina. And then it's just mainly just the offense and defense, defensive matchup. You look at Carolina's defensive personnel, like I said earlier, that's some of the worst personnel in all of the NFL, and just that matchup with Saquon on the ground, and then getting Devontae Smith back in the lineup. I think they'll be able to have success wherever they want, whether that's running or passing the ball. I think it's just going to be too much for Carolina, and they've been playing well for the last few weeks, but I think this is the week that they're going to get blown out.
Now we've come time to the 2-minute drill, where each of these guys will have 2 minutes to answer a question. If they don't finish, the whistle's going to blow on them when the time is up. They do, hey, it's good stuff on there. This week's question is this. Starts with you, Cayden. Milton Williams, Zach Bond, Mekhi Becton, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, and Kenneth Gainwell. These are all notable names that have been playing well in the final year of their contracts. Of these 6 players, how many of them do you think will return and who? Your time starts now.
Yeah, I'll go 3 of the six, and the Eagles are going to have some tough decisions to make this offseason. They're 19th in cap space. But I'll start with saying three of the six. I think the guys that will be back will be Josh Sweat. One, because their hands kind of forced because Bryce Huff didn't pan out the way they wanted him to, and you would have to go into next year trusting just Nolan Smith and Jalen Hunt. I don't think they'll be willing to do that. So they'll bring back Sweat. I think Bond will be back because he's been one of the best players, not only on defense, but one of the best players on this team. He really makes that defense hum. So I think they'll go beyond what they usually do with linebackers in their philosophy, and they'll bring him back as well. And I think they'll bring Brandon Graham back on 1 year deal. I don't think he'll go out like that. So those are three of the six. They're gonna have tough decisions. So you move on from Mekhi Becton because they have Tyler Steen in the waiting. We saw Tyler Steen when he came in this year from Mekhi Becton. He did pretty well. I think he can plug and play as your right guard. And then Milton Williams as well, who's been an incredible player for this Eagles front this year. And it's going to be a tough decision, but he's going to demand a lot of money. And they got guys like Moro Joma and Thomas Brooker, who they really like, who've been productive in limited snaps this year. So they might be willing to move on from him as well. And then Kenneth Gainwell, I don't see a world where he comes back. They could draft another backup running back. They have Will Shipley as well, kind of waiting in the wing. So those are the three of the six I have back are Sweat, Brandon Graham, and Zach Bond. And also part of it, the equation is just figuring out who you want to sign in the future. They might have to give guys like Nakobe Dean a contract extension coming up soon, Jordan Davis as well. So they're not going to be able to pay everyone. And they have good depth, at guard with Tyler Booker. Not Tyler Booker, sorry, Tyler Steen. And then they have good depth at defensive tackle with Thomas Booker and Moro Juma. So
Just, you know what? Yeah, I'll give it to you. Why not? I mean,
What are you giving them?
I know it's Thanksgiving. Why not?
It's not Thanksgiving. What are you giving them?
And also, I like to do is see your reaction afterwards when I say it. I'll give it to them. That one too. It's always fun.
I shouldn't even have to go. I won.
This is what I like to do. It's kind of fun now.
Right. Drew Carey be kicking him right out of the stage right now. Get off the stage.
It's Happy Pet Spayed and Neutered. Yeah, okay, cool. Bob, your time is up now too. Same question. Of those six guys, of Milton Williams, Zach Bond, Mekhi Becton, Brandon Graham, Josh Sweat, Kenneth Gainwell, who do you think will return next year, and why? Your time starts now.
Well, after giving you some crap there, I'll give you some kudos for this question because it's one of the best ones you've asked all year.
That's a lie.
No, it really is. It's a fascinating list because you think about it, Milton Williams. When the season started, he's been good, but you wouldn't really worry about bringing back Milton Williams. But now you do, and it could cost you because I mean, you go look at PFF's and you take PFF for whatever it's worth, but he grades out higher right now as a pass rusher according to PFF than Jalen Carter. Obviously, he benefits from Jalen Carter being double teamed all the time, but he's still become a force as a pass rusher. I think he had, according to PFF, he had nine pressures in the game against the Ravens last weekend. So, tough decision there. I don't know what they're going to have to pay him. I would bring him back. You go on from there. You go to Zach Bond again. Really tough decision. Best graded linebacker PFF. It's going to depend on what they want to pay him, what they think they have behind him. Mekhi Becton, I don't think they bring back Becton because of Tyler Steen, and it's going to cost them too much. Brandon Graham, it's entirely up to Brandon Graham. If Brandon Graham wants to be back here, he'll be back here. Josh Sweat, I don't know how you can't. They didn't want to pay either him or Hassan Reddick what they wanted in the offseason. Sweat has obviously had the better season, having one of his best seasons. I don't know where the Eagles would be without him. So you almost have to bring him back, but it's going to probably cost them more now than it would have at the end of last year. If they had extended him last year, by what he's done. And then Gainwell, probably not because they do have Shipley and they're not going to want to pay him running back. But if he wants the right price, yeah, sure. Why not?
And you got it in there. Good job. That's good. Bravo. You had, I had 4 seconds before before the whistle blew, so you did good. I commend you for that, and yeah, it's a good job for that. Now, finally, we go to our overtime question. It was our final one. And I thought it would be apropos to bring this up after we saw what happened in last week's game against the Ravens, where kicker Justin Tucker struggled mightily, missing field goals and extra points, and basically it cost the Ravens the game. It cost them the game. And I was going to ask you guys both. I'll start with you, Bob, and then I'll go Cayden. Can you recall an Eagles player going through the yips in a similar fashion to what Tucker has experienced this year?
Not necessarily yips, but what it makes me think of is David Akers' last game with the Eagles, and David Akers, Jake Elliott's been good, but to this point, David Akers, in my mind, is the best kicker the Eagles ever had. Had the longest career, has the most total points, but his career ended with missed field goals of 41 and 34 yards in a game where the Eagles outstatted the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers and lost 21-16. And he misses those two field goals, never plays for the Eagles again, moves on to the 49ers. What a horrible, horrible way for the best kicker in franchise history to end his career with his team. The story goes deeper than that. Because and just horrible story that his daughter had been diagnosed with a 6-year-old daughter, Haley, had been diagnosed with a malignant tumor just days before that. So obviously, who knows what it had to do with. But Andy Reid having and I don't know if he knew that, but he made the comment, we can all count, those points would have helped. It was just a horrible end to what a great career that David Akers had. And obviously he's in the Eagles Hall of Fame now, belongs in the Eagles Hall of Fame. But it wasn't necessarily yips. It was a one-day yip. And the fact that it was the last day of his career, just really sad ending to David Akers' career. Great career.
Great. Yeah, he had so many long field goals and what have you, and that left foot was very powerful. I remember that ending, and it was kind of cringeworthy a little bit the way things ended in terms of the way the Eagles treated him in terms of that. Cayden, what do you think? Can you recall an Eagles player going through the yips in a similar fashion to what Tucker has experienced this year?
Yeah, I don't know if this would necessarily be the yips, but the one case that comes to my mind of a player that we all thought was great and had worlds of potential and was a guy um, that you at the time you didn't think would fall off the way that he did, similar to Tucker, is looking back 4 years ago and Carson Wentz in 2020, when it just looked like he lost everything that he knew how to do, was turning over the ball at a rapid rate, couldn't push the ball down the field anymore, was missing short passes, everything that Carson Wentz seemed to try to do in 2020 just didn't work out. Eventually led, obviously, to him getting traded and Jalen Hurts taking over and the end of his time in Philadelphia. And he hasn't been able to recover from it. He went to Indy, struggled as well, played a little better, but still struggled. Clearly struggled in Washington. Now he's back up in Kansas City. So just lost the way about him. Once was a very dynamic football player, an MVP caliber player, and then before you know it, in just 2 or 3 years, it just something happened where you couldn't really explain why, but it just nothing just was working anymore for Carson Wentz, and it seems like that for Justin Tucker, and it could be his last year in Baltimore, and having these one really really bad seasons. Sometimes teams move on from a player, and that could happen with Justin Tucker, and it happened with Carson Wentz. So that's the one that comes to mind for me.
The one I was thinking about is borderline yips, but I look at the way he started his career here. This is going back to the late 90s, the way he started his career, and there were newspaper things about him, and I still remember it was around this time of year, Bobby Hoying. I look at a guy that was they thought they drafted this guy in the third round out of Ohio State. I think it was the third round. And you look at him, and he was tearing up defenses, and you're looking like, wow, the Eagles have a franchise quarterback. This is coming off of Randall had left, and they had Rodney Pete and Ty Detmer. That was guy, and then you have this guy you insert into the lineup. You're like, huh, they have this. He had great. I remember the back of the Philadelphia Daily News. I think it was that Hoying to the world. It was the guy who was playing so well. Then I don't know what happened. I know you could say like defense has got a book on him. You could say that he just remembered, hey, I'm Bobby Hoyt, whatever it was. He just stunk the next year. He was so much so that I was like, okay, yeah, he's done. He's not a quarterback. He went to the Raiders, I believe he went after that, and wasn't the same. But yeah, mine's Bobby Hoyt. It was that. My close second was Nate Brown, the guy who everybody said, great hands, great hands. He's going to be great wide receiver. He can catch anything, and he proceeded to drop everything. That's what the other guy I had on terms of that. Well, that's the end of this show. Another one, guys. Thank you so much for joining me, Bob, Cayden. Be sure to read their stuff on NJ.com/Eagles. We'll all have some coverage coming up against this Panthers game, which I think is going to be tougher and a little bit tougher, at least early on. But it'll be interesting to watch and see how his team responds in terms of that. So for Bob and Cayden, I'm Chris. Everybody have a good one.